Saptamsha, we're ready to change. Yeah?
This could be a retreat, you know. Like
Yeah, I know.
Material.
Not long retreat.
You know, cram it in. See, we're about halfway through.
Yeah, halfway.
All right.
D7, so maybe we'll try and speed it up a little bit. That way we can at least glance over and get a verbal understanding of everything, and then you can read the more detailed stuff later, because it's all here written. It'd be nice for me to focus on the highlight of the Varga chart. That way you know the importance of it. Because some people don't even understand what the Varga means and the real, they say, oh, that's for vehicles, but what about vehicles? Or, just like we saw with the Navamsha, it definitely shows about spouse, right? Everybody says spouse, and Dharma. Now we know what they mean by spouse and Dharma, right? They mean everything about spouse and everything about Dharma. So Saptamsha shows children. And before we even go to the Saptamsha, what do we need to check in the Rashi chart?
Jupiter.
Fifth
And
house.
the fifth house.
Fifth house, fifth lord, everything with the fifth house. What else?
Karaka was just Jupiter.
A5.
Oh.
Sun, Moon, Jupiter. You got the house based on, the sign that's placed in the house. You have Jupiter based on the lord of that house. And you have the moon based on the aruda of the house, the tripod that supports that house. The sign there, the lord of the sign, and the aruda. So we check all those things first. Then we look at the D7. And we look, what's the first thing we look at?
The Lagna Lord in the D7.
The first thing. The Karaka first.
Karaka.
What's the Lagna Lord going to show us?
How we feel about that particular area of life.
It's your ideals about that area of life. Do you really want to have children and this and that, or do you not like children that much? And whether you like children or not like children, whether you have children is a different story. This just shows our ideals, whether they're there or whether they're not there. It won't stop us from having them. And you know that there's people that have children that shouldn't really have children.
Exactly.
And so the Lagna Lord there will show us that they, whether they should have children or shouldn't. But whether they do or not, that's a different story.
Right.
So that's why I don't look at that as one of the first things. I look at the Karaka, because the Karaka will show me, if Jupiter's in the 12th house, I don't even need to look at children. If the A5 is with Saturn and there's a malefic in the 5th house, if Mars is in the 5th house and A5 is with Saturn in the Rashi and Jupiter is in the 12th of the Saptamsha, I guarantee I'd place $1,000, $1 million that they won't have children. Those three things will guarantee no children. Okay? So why should I look at their ideals for children yet? Okay. So we want to look at the Karaka first.
Okay.
And then we look at the Bhavas to see, okay, now do they have children? Because we can look and maybe that there's some other problems that make it so they don't have. And then we look at their ideals, how they treat them. To me, that's the order that's, going to give you your best. If you start talking about their ideals and then all of a sudden you see that they can't have them, right? Okay. So what are the Karaka Bhavas?
Karaka Bhavas?
Yeah.
5th house.
7th house.
The Bhavas.
Karaka Bhavas?
The Bhavas, the houses we need to look at.
We need to look at the 5th house.
Yeah? All the time?
Well, in Crux, the 5th, the 7th, and the 9th.
Okay, in that order?
Yep, the first issue, second, and the third.
Anybody else got an opinion? sure about that?
I don't know.
Fifth house. You gotta look at the fifth house.
Okay.
Well, because
First.
the seventh is the brother of the first issue, or the sibling.
When we're using the Rashi chart.
Oh, the Rashi chart.
No, I'm just going back to
Oh.
show you. In the Rashi chart, for children, and this is the rules of Sri Jataka, female horoscopy. For a man, you look at the fifth house for children, the abilities of having children and all that. There's other rules too, but we're not going to go into that today. And you look at the ninth house for a woman, because it goes reverse. That's in the Rashi. When we get to the Satamsha, if the sign, and you can flip over to the next page, you'll see a little chart up at the top. It says rule, if the lagna is odd. If it's odd, the first child is seen from the fifth house. If it's even, the first child is seen from the ninth house.
Wow.
Odd is masculine, right? So it goes to the fifth house first. If it's an even sign, we go to the ninth house first. It's feminine. Okay?
In D7 or Rashi?
D7. In D7.
In D7, if the first house is...
In the Rashi. For men, we go to the fifth house to see
it
about
goes
children.
the other way.
For women, we go to the ninth house. Just as people.
Wow.
Just to see the general karma with children.
This is the D1.
That's the rules of female horoscopy, according to all the classics. Okay, but that's the Rashi. Now when we go to the D7, if it's an odd sign, which is masculine, right, we go to the fifth house first. If it's an even, which is feminine, we go to the ninth house first. Makes sense, right? If we think about it in that way.
Now, do you look at pregnancies in the same way?
Everything.
So you
First
can
child is the first pregnancy. Second child is the second pregnancy. If there's an abortion to the second pregnancy, that shows as a dead child.
like Rahu and Mars or something like that.
Yes. So, the concept of abortion, I'm not pro-choice or anti-choice or any of those things. But you do see that there is a soul that was in the womb that did not fructify into, a physical body. But there is the Atma that's present there. And you will see that the first child is, like, if it's an odd sign, first child from the fifth house. The next child is the brother of that child. So the brother goes to, is what? The third from, right? So the third from the fifth is the seventh. That's the second child. The brother of that child is the third from it. So the third child is the ninth house. The brother of that child is the third. So we count 3 and we go to the fourth house. Okay? So this is how we see the order of children.
So the fifth child would be the first house.
Say again?
The fifth child would
Yeah.
be the 11th.
Yeah, you keep going
Okay.
until you hit the nodes. If there's a strong aspect of Jupiter on the nodes, then you can jump the nodes and keep going. But otherwise, the nodes generally the nodal axis generally stops the cycle.
So there's nothing in these houses. We look at aspects.
We'll get there in a minute. Let's first find the Karkabala, right?
So we keep going until we hit the node, and that shows the number of children a person will have?
In general, unless there's a Jupiter aspect to that house where the nodal axis is. And then Jupiter makes us so we jump that nodal axis.
And then we keep going again.
And then we can keep going to the next, like, terrible malefic combination or the nodal axis. Yeah. And it's rare that you actually jump the nodal axis. But it happens all the time, the same, in the same situation. So, but Jupiter has to be in some situation that he's letting the person jump the nodal axis. Otherwise, the nodes put an end. Because the Karaka of children is Jupiter. And Rahu is that worst enemy of Jupiter. But now, for example, if you're reading a chart and you see a malefic combination like debilitated Mars in the 5th house, and then you see some beneficial combinations in the 7th house, and good chance that the first pregnancy was aborted. There's special combinations for abortion, and we're not going to go into them, but you'll see that in the chart, and that means that the first child was aborted, and then the first physical child is actually shown as the second child in the chart.
For odd sign, rather.
Yeah. And once I even saw a chart where it was a Pasasya Bada, similar situation causing the abortion. And the woman, the child was still hanging out. It wasn't letting go of the situation. So this is how we see the pregnancy / child, if the pregnancy makes it into a child. But it's definitely the pregnancy. According to Varahamihira, the soul comes in as soon as the sperm and the ovum come together. The Atma and the Mana join and begin multiplying. And for like artificial insemination and things like that, it was the strangest thing to see, like how they came up with it a few thousand years, I don't know. But there's these combinations that say if this is in this situation, then the pregnancy doesn't occur for 4 years after Niseka. So after the actual orgasm of the actual adana, pregnancy doesn't happen for another 4 years.
Wow.
Now, how is that in an ancient text? They weren't freezing the semen. So how? I don't get it. I mean, did they think that it stayed in there and didn't actually conceive for 4? Semen doesn't live in there for 4 years.
That's just how they wrote it to explain it to people in that time.
But they had to have. I don't get it. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But they do have certain combinations that we see exist in people who get artificial insemination today.
The tantric texts describe the exact appearance of sperm and ovum. So they saw these things. They had microscopes, but they saw them.
Okay. So this is how we see where the children is. Now, whether there's a birth or not will be seen by the malefic or benefic situation of those houses. And Venus is a malefic in this case.
Venus is a malefic.
Venus is a malefic for childbirth. Venus causes abortions.
So why do they use Venus as the karaka for the embryo?
It's Shukradatu.
Oh, shoot.
But that's going to show whether the actual the egg and the sperm are strong enough. But that's it. That's not going to show whether there's going to be a birth of a child.
Oh.
Birth of a child doesn't relate to Venus.
So if Venus is in the rising sign, does that even make that more powerful?
No. It's relative to those houses.
Oh, okay.
We're looking at the situation of each of those houses.
Oh, I got it.
Now the big thing I wanted to teach about this chart is so we see the situation of birth or no birth based on the sign and the house, right? But what now when we want to start analyzing, because people always want to know about their kids. Well, how's my second son? He's been living far away and I don't know, he doesn't write much. What's going on with him?
Right. I don't know what he's doing.
I'm afraid of his career. What's going to happen to him? So we go to the
Let
D7.
go.
Huh?
Let go.
No, we got to answer. You can't say that. You got to tell them what's happening career-wise and whether they're going to fail or succeed or not.
You went on an African safari and you got ate up by wild animals.
You have to see that in the chart. So how do you see it?
How would I see that?
Yeah, how would you see that he got
The
eaten in a
second son?
safari?
I would see that Mars and let me think. Mars and Leo were in one of those houses.
Which house?
It would be like, let's say he was her first issue. It would be Mars and Leo in the 12th house.
Why the 12th house?
Because that'd be 8th.
No.
His
How
dad,
about the 6th?
6th house.
First.
Oh, the first.
No.
Oh.
First thing we look at. So, when we actually analyze the child, a child is an animate being. Do we see an animate being from a house or from a planet?
Planet.
So, for the first issue of an odd signed Saptamsha,
Mm-hmm.
we take the fifth lord.